take your email off your phone. That's the single biggest thing I did for my performance. Honestly, I was laid off actually. I had just come off of paternity leave. I had 1 month old. So I freaked out because I needed insurance. The best career thing about Amazon is you can go and totally reinvent yourself. So when I went to HR, I was building talent management software. I'd never heard the word talent management before. Literally, I didn't even know what it meant. Amazon's where, type A people go to feel bad about themselves. What's one of the reasons I was most successful is because I was willing to do stuff where I didn't know what I was doing. Almost at any time, you have kind of no idea what the hell you're doing. And nobody else does either. I think that's the sort of secret. Your boss's perception of you is going to be one of the most important things for your career growth.
The manager does not make a written contract that if you do this, you get this.
I'm a big fan of making contracts, actually. I put too much weight on my personal identity with my job. I had to go through burnout for years. I had no boundaries. I remember my executive coach was like, what's your self-care routine? I was like, what's that?
It's easy to say I want high trust and transparency, but it's harder to implement.
Particularly in tech, where I would say kindness is undervalued. So as leaders, you have to have the courage to have a tough conversation with someone, but people will respect you for it.
Hello and welcome everyone to the Inner Scorecard podcast. This is your host, Nikhil Kapahi. Just finished my day job as a scientist at Amazon to host this podcast for you. Before we go into today's conversation, I just want you to click subscribe because these guests are not found anywhere else on the internet. These guests are almost handpicked by me because of the value they've brought into my life. Today's guest is Andrew Willingham. He was the director of products at Amazon and is currently a vice president at Atlassian. Andrew also happens to be my ex-boss and one of the people that I absolutely loved working for. He led a team with very high trust, and everyone I know loved working under this guy. Andrew is an incredibly smart leader who climbed the ladder at Amazon. He joined Amazon as a senior product manager with 0 direct reports, and when he left Amazon as a director, he had over 300 people reporting into him. The podcast starts in 3, 2, 1. Okay, I think we're live and recording. This is good. How are you? How's the day going?
It's going just starting out. I think you're in Europe, right? So you must be at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think this is how we met. It's funny. I was in Luxembourg when you were hiring.
Yeah, you were. And then we got you over here. Well, how's everything going, man? It's been a long time since we've seen each other.
Yeah, it's pretty good. There's a lot of changes in life as life evolves, and not just Amazon, personal life as well. I just had my daughter. She's about 10 months now. She's actually no, my wife will kill me. She's about to be 1 year. So in a few days, and it's been amazing. I took 4 months off of Amazon for parental leave plus bonding leave, and started the podcasting during that time, and also just traveled and spent a lot of time with family. So it's very, very grateful. And I just got back to work about a week ago. And so it's been, I feel like, that intern, I feel like, who are you and what do you do? Because the whole team, Amazon moves so fast that I'm just back to, my managers change, my skips change, everybody's changed. I'm like, okay, hi everyone. So I don't know what I do. And this has been good. How have you been?
Been good, man. I mean, I've got 2 kids and they're one of them's about to turn 8 next week. And the younger one's 5.5, so they're in real school now, and growing up, which is a lot of fun. And work-wise, I've been at Atlassian almost a year, so coming up on a year in early Jan. So it's been really great to kind of see a new culture and see how different companies do things, and learn how to lead a different type of organization. And so I'm feeling really happy and grateful.
Yeah, I've heard often people when they move out of Amazon, it's a bit of a change, especially I think people like you have been there. I think you spent at Amazon close to 10, 11 years.
11 and a half years, yeah.
11 and a half years, so red badge. And I'm I think a lot of people, something funny also came up in one of my hikes. Somebody was at Apple and they were people who leave Amazon, they have a special focus group within our company. I was like, what is that supposed to mean? He's like, because they have been through stuff and they only they can relate to each other. I'm wondering how it has been for you, the transition, moving to Atlassian and
Yeah, it's interesting. I think definitely a different culture. I would say Amazon obviously has a very strong culture. And so, I mean, I know when we work together, and anyone who's listening who's been in Amazon, if you try to do stuff that's not Amazonian, you're going to get shut down pretty quickly and corrected. And so it's interesting. In Atlassian, I would say it's much more of a melting pot kind of a culture. Like they're very open to, they're curious about how does Amazon do this? How does Google do this? How does Meta do this? And so they kind of take the best parts of those cultures and run with it. So like, for example, I've started doing peer FAQs at Atlassian. Obviously, we're not using Word or we're not printing or doing line numbers. There's a little bit different, but that's been a mechanism that I have just really enjoyed as a product leader. Obviously, coming up through Amazon, I find it very helpful, and so like now we're doing that. Like I have a PFAQ review every week with the team, and anyone can write one. And so I think it's challenging but refreshing to have that flexibility to just decide like what's the right thing to do here. How do I want to lead this team? And I would say Atlassian's very eager and curious and accommodating to kind of however you want to run it.
Do you have to hold yourself back at times, with the Amazon culture, like somebody's asking for a meeting, you're asking for a 6-pager or a 2-pager, or you're looking at line numbers, you're like, oh, I wish there were line numbers. I'm wondering, do you have
I've
to
made
hold
the
yourself
line
back?
number feature request for sure. But I think, we're not actually printing pages, so it's hard to know what a 6-pager is. I think Atlassian's, we use Confluence to write the docs, and they have kind of an estimate of how long it takes to read it. So I kind of use that as a proxy. But that's what I'm saying. I think, I think at Amazon sometimes we took it a little too far in terms of like the literalness of the mechanism. So like, when I was coming up in 2013, 2014, we had certain leaders who would it's like grammar school. It's like, okay, you should use a semicolon instead of a comma or something. You're like, all right. So I think you learn a lot about writing, but I think that the value of the mechanism is really in the thinking. So I've tried to be much more flexible on, hey, what decision are we trying to make here? If this document or artifact drives the discussion in a positive way, I'm open to it. And so again, that's been a challenge, fun challenge to kind of figure out how do we drive results in an environment where it's not so standardized and mechanized in terms of how everything works. And that's been a fun change.
Yeah, I agree. I think formalism just for the sake of it doesn't make sense. It's like then you're just schooling people like who are especially new versus like you extract away the usefulness of it. So take me back a few years, Andrew. Like I think you joined Amazon back in 2013 as a senior product manager, and then you transitioned to a senior manager, and then I think I saw your promotion to a director. And I personally believe you were this close to being a VP as well. But I'm wondering, what are the skills needed to navigate through Amazon? I think you've done that. Like I would say, it gets harder the higher you climb, and I think you actually were one of those people that I looked up to, and you're like, yeah, you're very smart in navigating. I think that's something, I don't know if it's natural or if it's something you picked up, navigating through Amazon and generally in corporate.
It's first of all, thank you. I appreciate that. I was very lucky, I would say, at Amazon. Like I'll share some skills, some specific skills I think I would encourage people or that served me well. But before I get into that, I would say a lot of career is luck, like a lot more than people think. Like I got lucky. So for example, at Amazon, when I was a senior manager, I was laid off, actually. I had just come off of parental leave, paternity leave. I had like a 1-month-old. And so I came back to my role as a senior manager in consumer marketing, and I was laid off. So I freaked out because I needed insurance and all this sort of stuff. So I was like, and that's how I came in HR. And that was kind of the start of I would say my whole trajectory changed, getting out of retail and into this other environment where I was kind of in full control of who we hired, what roles we hired, what crafts we hired, how we delivered results. I was just measured by the results I drove. So that's just a small example of where multiple times in my career, what appeared to be a huge setback was actually a huge blessing in disguise. And that's one of them. And I've had 2 or 3 of those points where I thought I was going to go over here and actually something else happened out of my control and I had to adjust, and it ended up being way better than what I was going to do before. So I would tell folks, one is be open to changes. Particularly at Amazon, where I would say kind of the best career thing about Amazon is you can go and totally reinvent yourself. So for example, when I went to HR, I was building talent management software for operations. I'd never heard the word talent management before. Like literally, I didn't even know what it meant. I had sat in one OLR. It's like, I was like a frontline manager. And so Amazon gives you the opportunity if you're kind of a smart, jack of all trades, open, kind of good cultural person, like they'll be like, all right, cool, let them try it. And so I think that's been really helpful. But in terms of skills, let me get back to that. Like I have a few things I'd say. One is you got to have a motor. Like you got to know how to get shit done. So generally, particularly in Amazon, but it's true of Atlassian, I'm sure it's true of many other places, like the results you drive is how you're going to be evaluated, kind of period. So you're going to have to figure out how do you allocate your time in the places that's going to drive the results that matter to the business. So you got to be hungry, you got to have a motor. I would say you got to have curiosity. So you have to, I think the people who are most successful want to understand how things work. They want to understand and poke holes in the status quo. It's like a lot of the value I provided in HR was not because I knew the domain. It was actually because I didn't know the domain. So like Nikhil, I remember you and I worked a lot on like downstream value of talent actions. That was just a copy of downstream impact from retail in terms of how we made investments in ad placements. So I literally took something I did as a senior product manager in marketing and was like, all right, what if we apply this to the talent management realm? And it was innovative. So I think the curiosity is going to be really important. I would say, kind of along with what I said earlier, you got to be comfortable being uncomfortable. Like that's if you're talking about what's one of the reasons I was most successful is because I was willing to do stuff where I didn't know what I was doing, like almost at any time. So like I think that's where, particularly as a director or as a manager, how do you get comfortable leading your team when you have kind of no idea what the hell you're doing? And nobody else does either. I think that's the sort of secret is like, I remember looking up at these VPs or directors or Jaw or someone like that. And like, oh man, these guys really, how do they learn all this? And what they're doing? My sense is nobody knows what they're doing. They're just kind of making a best guess, adjusting along the way, and they're comfortable with that. So I'd say comfortable being uncomfortable. A couple other things. I'd say lastly, two things. You need to know what your boss cares about. So like a lot of corporate, particularly large corporate at Amazon, your boss's perception of you is going to be one of the most important things for your career growth. Because, anytime we're allocating headcount or allocating projects or selecting folks for roles internally, these are all like subjective decisions that are largely powered by leadership perception on top of your rating and everything else. So, and your ability to promote your own people. These are all kind of perception oriented. So you asked like, how did I play the politics? Like, I think politics gets a bad rap, sort of this dirty word. I'm like, okay, this person's political, like, they're just playing politics. But, in any enterprise, you have like politics is largely the management of perception. Like if I'm playing politics, I'm trying to influence how people think about me and my team. And I'll talk a little bit later on kind of what my leadership style and how I presented myself and my team was. But that was a large part of my and my team's success, was the ability to be perceived as competent and ability to be perceived as innovative and get stuff done. And finally, I'd say you have to find a way to be sustainable. Like burnout is real. Like I've burned out multiple times at Amazon. Largely, I would say perhaps, but if you can do all this stuff, you're a smart person, you can figure out how to get shit done. The ability to do that for a long period of time might be the number one determination of career success if you care about getting promoted. So for example, look at Amazon. Anybody in S team has got like 15, 20 years of tenure generally. Same with Google, same with Apple. I mean, the people coming in from the outside to tech companies, I think is rare, mostly at the C-suite or something like that. Like maybe you have some VPs who change hands, but if you want to be a leader at a company, I think tenure matters a lot. I think statistics would show you that. So how do you do all this in a sustainable way? How do you set boundaries? How do you say no? How do you... so we should talk about that a little bit. People are interested.
Does it go to zero, Andrew? Like does the tenure, like for example, the 11 years at Amazon, I know it would count, but like for a new company, for example, if you switch to another big tech or you move to Atlassian, like, does that matter? How much does that
Well,
matter?
it's interesting. I would say Amazon and maybe Fang in general, but certainly Amazon's name carries weight. So like everybody knows in the industry, if you can do 11 and a half years at Amazon, you can probably survive anywhere. I mean, that's just how hard Amazon is. And so it gave me a lot of confidence, honestly,
Mm-hmm.
of like, cool, if I can, my first year at Amazon was the hardest year of all. I mean, I wasn't sure I was gonna make it for the first year. And then I was like, okay, I did 1 year. Let me see if I can get to two. And then it got easier as I got on because I understood the culture more. So primarily what I did was I understood the culture very well. And that's how I
Right.
used it to play whatever to influence perception and drive resources and talk my way into roles I had no business being in. And so um, I don't think it goes to zero, but if I look around all the
Yeah.
companies I see, generally the people at the highest echelons are going to be high tenure. But that's you have to decide, is that important to you or not? Um,
Talk to me about, like, I think you mentioned like, I think the balance between, like, you got lucky but you were actively seeking discomfort, right? That's what it sounds like, and that's what I saw as well. You were getting in rooms where you knew it was going to be uncomfortable, but you knew that's where the opportunities are. um like, how do you navigate knowing that, especially when you entered HR, for example, like that was a big switch and you were kind of forced hand into, switching the roles. I'm wondering, like, how do you find out, how do you sense that this is an interesting room to be in and this is an interesting project to take on? This is what matters to leadership. Like, I'm wondering, like, is that some sort of communication you have with your manager where you ask them that question? What is the framing that you use to understand that, okay, the signal to noise ratio of, like, yes, this matters to this organization, and if I deliver this, because most often it's not, the manager does not make a contract with you, right? It's not like a written contract that if you do this you get this, but you're sensing it out as you're building it. But I think the first call that you make, that, okay, I'm going to go after this and chase this, I think you did that incredibly well, is chasing important things, whereas others initially would just say, yeah, this doesn't look important, I know why he's doing it. So, like, I think I'm also trying to understand, like, how do you pick those things, and um, talk more about those things. Yeah.
yeah, it's a great question. I'm a big fan of making contracts, actually. It's funny. So, like the best managers I had and the best relationships I have with my directs is when I could make a contract. So I would encourage folks, if you have a good relationship with your manager and you trust them, I would try to make a contract because then it's very clear. So, when I was trying to get to director, like, I had a contract. I was like, all right, you deliver this, you scale it, you do this. That, I mean, no guarantee, but at least you're going to get put forward. And so that was really helpful for me because I'm kind of a no bullshit, transparent guy. Like, you just tell me what you want me to do, I'll go do it. And so I actually am a big fan of the contract. So I'd say explore that. In terms of getting into rooms, like, when I got to HR, where I came from, I started with, I was on this leadership team and it was like, I was the tech guy. So I was a tech guy. We had somebody who was doing exec development. We had someone who was owning talent management. We had somebody who was owning learning and development. We had some other folks. But when I first started, I didn't feel qualified to say anything. I was like, I'm only going to answer if there's a tech question. And so I was like, stay in my lane. I'm not going to challenge people. They're the experts. And my boss pulled me aside and was like, he's like, dude, like, you're on this leadership team. Like, I expect you to add value. Like, even in these places you don't know. It's like, you need to start speaking up. So I had to be encouraged to do it. And after that, you start off and you're like, I remember the first time I was like poking on a talent management thing, I was like, oh man, I don't know what I'm talking about. But I said something just logically and everyone's like, oh yeah, that's a good point. So I was like, oh, okay. So like, that's what I would say is logic carries you a long way. Like, if there's one skill I have as an exec, it's pretty much like asking logical questions. And that allows you to transcend domains. The domain knowledge helps, of course. I mean, if I went into sales tech, I'd have to understand what the hell is a sales funnel first and what is it. But you can learn a domain, but the power or the superpower is, how do you abstract out the questions you're going to ask that are smart questions? And smart questions are honestly mostly questions that feel dumb. So I remember when we
Right.
used to work together, like I had economists reporting to me. I had never met an economist. These are labor economists. I didn't know what statistical significance was. I didn't know what p-value was. I was like, but I asked a lot of dumb questions, like, all right, hey, like, why do we want to maximize area under curve? And
Right.
it's like, you have to ask these questions, and that leads to another question, another question. And a lot of times I would find an insight 2 or 3 questions down. I'm like, they're like, oh yeah, actually, yeah, maybe we shouldn't do that. I'm like, all right. And then you kind of walk out of there like, ooh, I kind of got through it. But the more comfortable you can get with asking what feels like a dumb question, I think the more you're going to learn, and the more you're able to challenge the held assumptions of people you're working with who are SMEs. And I think that's the risk with being a SME in your little domain, is you know everything so well that it's immediately obvious what best practice is. It's immediately obvious what model we should use. This is what the papers say. This is what research says. Like, that's great as a way to jumpstart. But I've found oftentimes the biggest innovations we made were when we did something that wasn't standard practice. And I think asking those dumb questions is a way to drive at that.
And as a somebody reporting to you, I think that was also that was a significant confidence booster, because in a sense I understood that you're super vested. I think that was one of the most interesting conversations we would have, is because you'd be asking those 3 whys and 4 whys, like going deeper. It just not like gave me confidence that you understood, but you also cared about it. So that was like, also it works out for the other person, because often you probably know this better than me, that SMEs are so locked in that whatever they say is like treated as gospel. So they actually like that conversation, that okay, let's understand why. And I, like, as an SME in machine learning, for example, I had to rethink how to explain it, because that made me think like things about differently. Um, and
Yeah, that's the thing. You just
uh,
said you have to care. Like, that's when I say motor earlier, that's what I mean. Like, you have to give a shit. Like, and if you're
right.
in a role where you're not giving a shit for whatever reason, I think you need to get out of that role, because that's just what I would say. I think it matters a lot, because that care, to your point, it has um, ripple effects, particularly as a leader. I mean, you have to care. And I think I know we're going to talk about leadership in a minute, but like, people can tell when you don't care. People know when you're not being authentic. And I think that is one of the biggest Achilles heels for folks, is like, people are a lot smarter than I think people think they are. They know when you're telling the truth. They know when you're being transparent. They know when you're giving real feedback. They know when you care, you don't care. And so that's when I said motor earlier. That's really what I mean. You have to care. You have to care about
But
what
to be
you're doing.
honest, I feel that everybody understands that at a baseline level, that they have to care about what they're doing. But I think people often find themselves in a dilemma or conflict, because, for example, like a senior person has been promised a promotion up X in few months, and they're not enjoying the project they're doing, but they just want to grunt it out. And I feel that often, like, that's where the most frustration comes in, because the work that you're doing is frustrating day to day, but there's a reward in the end. So you just keep doing it, and you don't look up and see. And I think that's where some people spend years in that, vicious cycle, where they're not able to step out saying like, okay. And unfortunately, if something happens, the management changes or reorg happens, you're like, oh my God, like then it's really, really heartbreaking to see that I spent 2 years doing the work that I did not like, and I didn't even get any, anything out of it. And do you think that that's relatable for Amazon and generally at corporate?
For sure. I mean, I think Amazon, perhaps more than other environments, I don't know, certainly more than Atlassian, like, people are promo obsessed. I mean, Amazon, there's so few levels, there's so much power that comes with a promotion. You get a larger voice when you're a higher level. Like, that's the culture Amazon wants to create. It's a culture of scarcity. It's a culture of everybody wants to get that next level. And the reason they do that is because it drives high levels of discretionary effort. So we want everybody working overtime, doing the hard work, pushing the boundaries. That's very advantageous for the company. My advice to folks though is, I just say life's too short for that, man. Like, there's no guarantees in promos ever. Like, I've
Right.
never guaranteed somebody a promo. I'd say, all right, I'll put you up. Maybe it goes through, maybe it doesn't. Like,
But
it's largely out of my control.
that conflicts with your contracts. Like, I'm wondering,
Well,
like, how do you play
the
that?
contract I make is always, I'll put you up. Like, the contract I'll
Got
make
it.
is I'll put you up, or I'll get this person to say yes. Or like, I never guarantee a promo. I just guarantee I'll put you up if you do this work, because that's all I can guarantee. So I don't make promises I can't cash. And it always
Okay.
makes you nervous when I do it, but I've made a bunch of big hires and retained folks and built folks and delivered value on doing it. So as a manager, you got to decide, you're
Right.
gambling a little bit. And as soon as you say something and don't do it, now you've lost your credibility. So, but I would say Amazon is very level oriented. The people we hired at Amazon are very type A achievers who, like it's a joke of it, Amazon's where, type A people go to feel bad about themselves or whatever that quote is. Like it's somewhat true. Like I think because the environment's so tough, and I think a lot of us feed off of that. But my advice to folks on podcasts is, look, no job's worth hating your job. No promo's worth hating what you're doing. And because there's no guarantees, because life is too short. And, every time I really wanted a promo, I found I only got it when I stopped caring about it. Like if I was really like, I got to get promoted, like what I got to do to promote, that's when I wasn't going to get promoted. And so usually every time I got promoted, it was like when I went over the hill, I was like, all right, like it's out of my hands, man. If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't happen, whatever. And then it happened. So I would say the promo, like, why do you want to get promoted? Is it the money? I mean, Amazon, the money's not, you're not gonna get a big bump usually when you get promoted. Is it, you probably can make more money if you just leave and take a role someplace else. So is it the money? Is it the power? Is it the status? For me, it was largely the status. Earlier in my career, for sure, highly motivating. Now I'm motivated by different things. And
status, Andrew, like, is it like at a personal level, like status of who you think Andrew is, or status just within the company? Because outside, as soon as you leave Amazon doors, nobody cares, right? I'm just
nobody cares.
Out loud, so
I would say, I didn't think I'd go here in this podcast, but I think I put too much weight on my personal identity with my job, and it took like a health scare. Actually, it took a health scare to sort of shake me out of that. And so I'm much happier where I am now, where I'm not judging success off of my career because all the reasons we just said, you don't control it. You have some control over your career, but like promotion, you have very little control, almost no direct control, other than telling your manager, promote me or I quit or I deliver the result. But like it's all indirect. It's a really, I guess at the time I didn't realize it was a really dumb way to operate, or not dumb. It's not a satisfying way to operate, because you're basing how you feel about yourself off of stuff you can't control. That's always a recipe for a bad time.
No, absolutely. And I think personally for me, that was very true as well in my case. And I think it took me, I think you were my manager at that time and my mom passed away. And I remember that was a moment where I realized that, first of all, I just feel that I still feel incredibly thankful that how you handled the whole situation. You were just take time off. And because I was at some points, I was worried because I did not know how long the whole, the care would last in the end. And you're like, just don't worry about it. I'm like, wow, this is amazing. So at least there's one thing off my plate. I can just be completely at home. But at that moment, I also realized how much of my identity is just tied to 7 to 10 people, not even, when you say Amazon is really maybe 20, 30 people that you're in closed doors with more day to day. And I'm like, why does that matter so much? And, but I think it was I think you need some, for you, probably the healthcare, and then some personal lows or highs to realize that you have to have a different perspective. And I see that quite often in Amazon. People are just, even if you meet them outside, it's interesting that they would always converge back to Amazon conversations. And it's sometimes I set up a timer in my head, and even people that I'm very close to as friends, I would set up a timer and okay, let's start a topic which is not Amazon. And then sometimes it is less than 10 minutes they converge back to something else. I'm but it's funny, their spouses are making fun of them for the same reason. So that's a good check.
Nikhil, I always tell my folks that prioritize your health and family over work. And it sounds very obvious, but I think the tech culture is very work focused. I think it thrives off of that. But to your point, we're all going to go through events in our life that are way more important than work. And as soon as you step away, you realize, to your point, if you leave a company, you're going to move on next day. They've already opened the rec. They got somebody else to come up. Like, so I think it's, I'd encourage folks to get a healthy perspective and some distance from your career. I found it to be very helpful because with that distance, you can understand, okay, what am I actually trying to do here? What am I optimizing for?
Right.
Am I actually doing stuff I enjoy or not? Okay, if I don't enjoy it, what about it don't I enjoy? So like, I think that perspective and distance, that was one of the best things I did for my career and performance actually, was put a lot more distance between my emotions and my success at work, counterintuitively.
Amazing. So I think when you're talking about feeling like that frustration when you're doing that work that you don't really enjoy, I'm wondering, is that also a time when you switch teams? How did you navigate that? I think you mentioned about maybe you could talk more about the story that you had when you were laid off, but also like how did you navigate switching teams or jumping ship altogether, like to different companies? Especially, you have that sunk cost fallacy that is not really a fallacy. I mean, it's really true that you invested so much time to learn things and navigate the system, and now you're gonna say quit, restart a new game. And how do you decide that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. I mean, the way I do it is I create a framework, a role evaluation framework. So it's an Excel spreadsheet or a Google sheet or whatever, and I pick like the top 7 to 8 things that's important to me about a role. So for example, it might be supportive boss who I can learn from. It might be learning a new domain or leading a cross-functional team or no commute or lots of time, whatever it is. You go through here and you kind of pick what those are. And then what I do is I've evaluated all my roles. So I go back and I say, okay, well, for this role, what would I give the score? With this role, I give the score. And you weight these things. So you basically say, okay, get these 8, you make them add up to 100, and then you multiply your score to get this thing. And so when I'm evaluating potential new roles, I put them through that thing. And I say, okay, cool. Like knowing what I know from the interview and it's not perfect or questions I asked, how confident can I fill this out? And once I fill it out, is that score, is it significantly different than my current role? Is it the same? Is it lower? So that's really helps me kind of get out of my heart decision and into my brain decision. And what I found was, I know I have the right weights when I look back. Like I remember my favorite roles. And when I can get a criteria and weight that shows that those are the highest scoring roles, then I know, okay, cool, this is onto something. And that criteria changes over your career. So if you asked me back when I was an L6 product manager, I'd be like, I want scope, I want responsibility, I want, to be a manager, I want to deliver high value and work on big projects. If you ask me now, like it's much more about work-life balance. Am I leading in a new way? Am I learning something new? Am I challenging myself in terms of how I lead? And so I would encourage folks really go in with a framework that can help you decide. Because without that, I think you're going to make an emotional decision. And usually what people do is they overvalue things like comp. They overvalue things like a promo being dangled. They overvalue getting a large team. Like these are all things that I think at first glance, you're like, of course, that's good. But until you get into these situations where, and as your career goes on, you'll see sometimes you're getting paid the least amount and the smallest team, but you're having the largest impact and you're learning the most. Versus sometimes you're getting paid a lot and you got a large team, but it's all bullshit. Like you're just doing attendance taking and space planning and the OP1 for the 4th time. So like I would encourage people to really figure out what's important to you and then evaluate your current and past roles and future roles against that. That's how I do it.
Yeah, often I feel that at least within my circle, so like, early or mid-level career professionals, like I think salary is like fixed. For example, where I come from, back in India, like 30% increase, that's the minimum. Like that is a prerequisite for them to even consider. And I think that shuts down. I think, first of all, that's a very, very linear and, narrow way of looking at things. But second of all, like it just cuts down all, like more than half of the interesting roles because they might not, first of all, they might not be paying you right now. There might be more future returns. Also like other tangential things which are not, which are indirectly tied to your compensation, but like could be skill development or could be an experience. And I think that's where, I think that the path of like, I think we'll come down to it later as well on your entrepreneurship versus corporate. But I think the corporate mindset is a lot of that there has to be a jump when you're shifting roles. And if I had to get a pay cut, then I would, take up something that I like. I would rather be like joining a startup or something like that. And I think very few people are able to switch that, because I think it's just a matter of habit too. Like I think once you start getting that, monthly salary, and that's like a few thousands of dollars, then you're like, okay, how can I reduce that?
Yeah, I mean, I think my advice to folks is figure out, you want a role that's going to pay you enough to live the lifestyle you want to live. And if you want to optimize for comp, sure, you can do it. Again, it's largely outside your control. And as knowledge workers, generally your comp's going to increase over time as you get more experience. So like over time, I think you're going to see someone with 20 years experience is going to be paid more on average than somebody with 2 years experience. Because you're able to pattern match, because you've been here before, particularly as a leader or even as an SME. So like I would encourage folks, like there's a time to optimize for comp. It's probably not early in your career. Like I would and if people are asking for advice from me, I optimize for responsibility and uncomfortableness early in my career. I'm glad I did. I wouldn't want to go back and do it now. Like I think I'm wiser in a lot of ways in terms of how I live my life. But I think when I was in my mid to late 20s, that was a perfect time to be grinding, or whatever we call it these days, because my focus was my career, and I was hungry and learned a lot, and I really that was a lot of momentum for me as I continued in my career.
Do you think that the compounding is very similar, like how it's in finance, like in your career? So for example, the money that you make probably at your 45th year of your life versus the money that you made at 25th year or the 30th year of your life, like if you're 30-year-old, that's a stark difference, like the amount of money that you'll make much later in life. So basically going only for that 10% increase and 50% increase, and not assessing any other KPIs in your career, that is not going to pay off, because the difference is really at the end of the career. Like, is that also how you think about it?
Well, I just think money is not the most important thing. I mean, at least not for me, and probably shouldn't be for most people if I had an opinion on it. I mean, more money, more problems. Like to your point, as soon as you get used to some baseline, salary every month, okay, now you can't go below. It's very constraining. I think we as humans get very comfortable, and get a lot of pride off of our compensation, as we should. But I think it's you have to decide. Each person should decide, how important is compensation to me right now? Is it worth working a job I hate? All right, maybe if you're paying me $10 million a year or 20, I mean, but I doubt it. My whole point is if you go down that path, it feels like a dark path. Like, okay, I'm going to take money now to do something I don't want to do. Like, I just,
I see
my
that a
advice
lot.
To folks is,
yeah.
No,
I see that in my circles, as I said, maybe from the place where I'm coming from in India, and coming from very low and middle class income families. But do you still see that this kind of a just very money minded or very compensation focused? Do you see that even at higher levels, or that's just innate to human nature?
Sure.
That doesn't go away?
No, for sure you see it. Yeah, of course. Probably even worse at higher levels, because they think they're smart and entitled. I mean, 100%. So I think it's a universal human thing. I personally, I just think, again, more, there's plenty of studies on this. More money does not mean more happiness.
Yeah. Right.
Past a certain point, it means less happiness. Just got more shit to manage. So that's just, again, that's the perspective comment. Have a perspective, get some distance from this thing. And then I think it's helped me not get so spun up and worry about stuff that, one, I don't control, two, that is not very related to my happiness. And three is, look, if you're in tech, you're getting paid a shitload of money already. A lot of money. Anybody is. So, I mean, I would say enjoy it. Spend it and hopefully it makes you happy. But if you live your whole career trying to make comp, I think it's going to be a frustrating ride for the large part.
Right. Instead of thinking that, you're going to be future proof with more money, but if you just level it up with skills, it's the same. It's even better. I feel that, you're way more future proof with your skills and your mindset and health, for example. I think you talked about.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, what's your health worth to you? Right. How much money a year is your health worth to you? How much money a year is your mental health worth to you? How much money a year is your stress worth to you? How much money a year is your, ability to work out and stay in shape and eat right? I mean, those are hard questions. I mean, a lot of
Right.
money, I think, is the answer. But even sacrificing any of that. So I guess what I'd say is, I've never, coming back to your original question, I've never hated a job I had for very
Right.
long. Either I would try to change the aspects I didn't like, and if I couldn't, I would move. Or I just found through that curiosity, I'm like, all right, cool. Like, HR might not be the sexiest place ever, but there's a lot of cool problems, and I'm interested in the problems, and so I'm just going to go follow my curiosity. Like that's really what's guided me and driven my career success, I would say, and happiness is really just what's
Right.
interesting. And for me, what's interesting is learning something new, working with people. The HR is a
Yeah.
bunch of like subjective, hard to measure, high impact, cultural, like these are all things that get me really interested because there's not one answer. It's not like, all right, I'm going to optimize this model to maximize, throughput or accuracy. It's like we're not doing that. Like you could argue it both ways. These are judgment decisions, and these are big decisions that have big impact on people. So again, that's just what gets me going.
Yeah.
For some other people, they're like, oh, I couldn't imagine working with people. That's like way. I want something that's
Right.
measurable, and I want something that's clear. So I would say follow your curiosity. And I think
Right.
for me, if I'm curious, I'm engaged. If I'm engaged, I'm effective. If I'm effective,
Right.
I'm inspiring other people. And you get a lot of that for free if you just show up and like, oh, how does that work? Or why do we do it that way?
Yeah, and I think for me also it was very similar that I moved from supply chain to PXT, and I was like, I just wanted to like really genuinely solve human problems rather than
Yeah.
getting your iPhone shipped to you faster. And I think to your earlier point, some of the economists who wrote that the happiness maximized at $75,000. I was recently reading Nassim Taleb, like he's another economist. He was making fun that the author who wrote that piece, like $75,000 maximizes your income, they earn like more than 150, and they're always taking up gigs which gives them more money because they're like you don't have to trust the experts because they don't take their own advice. But just a quick question, like were you like when you were at Amazon, was there a certain framework or process you had on, okay, like every 10 months or so you were interviewing with other teams, like not interviewing but actually just genuinely seeing what else is around? Or were you like, depending on the project and the work that you were getting assigned, like you were just locked in? Like, is that
Locked in.
I couldn't come
I mean,
up
I
to an
think
answer with that.
I was locked in. I think, if anything, I wish I probably stayed at all these roles a little too long. Like I found for me, like
Mm.
every 5 years about I made a big change. And it probably should have been more like 4 years. So I think if you think about a role, when you join, you don't, there's sort of like, I mean, you can these days, there's like, you think you're capable, and then all of a sudden you realize you don't know anything, and then you get more capable, and then you're kind of an expert, and then you're learning plateaus. And so for me, that 4 years is probably the sweet spot. And then but all my roles, I ended up staying like 5 years. And that was always probably a year too long. So, but
Mhm.
I was never shopping. Like I was always locked
Right.
in. And I think, one, because I was enjoying the work, but two, because look, finding a job's a lot of work,
Yeah.
and it's a lot of work, and you got to start by polishing up the resume and tapping your network and calling up people. It's a full-time job looking for a job. So I just didn't have the time, or
Very true.
I was so engaged I didn't want to do it. So but I'd say to folks, like, you should think about two things. One is, how long are you going to spend in any role? Because the longer you spend, the more your story of your career becomes, you do this thing and this is your area. And two is, think about the domain. So I stumbled into becoming an HR tech expert. I just wanted to run a team. I didn't care whether an HR or ad. I mean, I would have done anything. It was about the opportunity to lead a team. But I was in the HR domain and I became a domain expert. And so, like, when I went recently as an exec to look for a new role, like, the only traction I'm getting is the HR tech executive. I went in there like, okay, I'm going to be this jack of all trades. I'm going to get in some new domain. Like, the market's challenging right now, but nobody's hiring for general athletes. They're hiring for specialists. So if I went back in time, I would recognize that earlier. I would say, okay, I'm going down this domain route, and now my career is probably going to be in this domain. Like, that's great, but I think realizing that earlier would be helpful. So that's my counsel to people is, well, you are going to be what you do. And I
Right.
would say interviewing and is all about storytelling. Like, it's just a
Mhm.
story you're telling. So what story are you going to tell? Is it I spent 10 years in this one area because X, Y, and Z, and now I'm one of the world's best in this area? Is it I switched roles every 2 years because I wanted this breadth or I wanted to get this domain exposure, and now I'm going to do X, Y, and Z with it? Like, but I think I wish I was more intentional about my career story and the decisions I'm making versus I was kind of so looking down at my feet, focused on, okay, I want to run a team, or I want to run a bigger team, okay, or I want to ship a bunch of products, or I want to go something external. I didn't think about like, okay, all this is in this domain, and now that's going to be who I am.
Right. I think it's the ripple effect of like those small choices. And again, it's, if you half-ass your way of searching a new team, then you're gonna get up something that might sound interesting, but might not fit in the bigger picture. And you kind of
people have to understand, switching teams is a risk. It's a
Right.
risk. I mean, it's a risk every time. It's a risk because nobody knows you. You don't know anybody. It's hard to uncover really what the true type of role and company and bosses from an interview. You talk to someone for an hour and you're like, okay, make a decision. Like you have very little data. So I would say like, there's a lot of job hopping, I'd say, and generally, particularly for early and mid-career people, and people have used that to maximize comp. Certainly, usually when you jump, you're going to have comp as an incentive to move companies or whatever, but it's not without risks. So like the other thing I think about is when I think about a role or switching roles, you want to evaluate it on if I'm changing companies, managers, crafts, cultures, domains. Like you probably don't want to change all five at once. So like when I went from Amazon to Atlassian, I was changing companies, cultures, bosses, same domain though. And I was initially kind of bummed out. Like I wanted to get a new domain. I wanted to learn something new, but thank goodness I did that because all the value I provided for like the first 6 to 9 months, when I didn't know the culture, I didn't know the people, I didn't know what the hell we were doing, was domain. And so it was a foundation where I was continued to be credible because of my prior experience. And so I've come around to that to think I wouldn't change the more of these you change, the more risky this change is. Right. And so that would be my counsel to folks is, there's times when changing jobs is worth the risk for sure. It can catapult your career. It can get you engaged. It can make a big difference. But go in with your eyes open about the risk and how much you're changing. And the more you change, the more likely it is you're going to have to bet on yourself to go in there and figure it out and do whatever. Right. That's the kind of situations you were talking about earlier where you get to this place where you're like, I just have to do this job because I've only been here 3 months, even though I hate it, or I'm making too much money. Like that's the place I think you don't want to constrain yourself where you don't have options.
So I think to your earlier point, seeking discomfort, I would just add one more word is like seeking discomfort strategically. Like,
intentionally. Yeah. I don't think you want to
about seeking discomfort. It's not just, you have you just want to cause harm to yourself. You're just actively, stepping out in the cold without a sweater, but you're being strategic about it. Yeah.
Well, that's why I'm saying when I go back to luck, like, a lot of my roles, I I used to tell people I worked for, I'm like, just put me in the deep end. Like, just throw me in there. If I don't do it, just, you can manage me out. Like I always bet on myself. And looking back, that's kind of crazy. Like I wish I hadn't taken that much risk. I mean, again, I got lucky. I figured out a way to deliver. I figured it out most of the time. But like now, I wouldn't bet all that on a role. But again, when I was earlier or mid-career, like that was what I was optimizing for. That's what I wanted at the time. And so that's the other thing. Like think about how much are you betting? If if you take the poker analogy, if I'm pushing all my chips in the pot and I have to be successful now in this role or I'm out of here, those are big moments. I think I would go in intentional and knowing, okay, I'm going to push it all in. Why? Because I'm ready. I'm hungry. I can sleep well if I fail. I see an opportunity here. I've got the support of leadership. I think make sure those things are there before you take these risks, but the risks can pay off. They can pay off. And so that's the other thing. I think about your risk appetite. My relatively high appetite for risk or very high appetite for risk early in my career paid off later. But at the time, I didn't realize how crazy I was being, I would say.
Yeah, that's the youth days. Is that something you would say that you would do differently? Like that's what you were saying earlier. Like
no,
that one thing that you would do. What would you do differently if you were starting over again? I'm curious.
Well, it's a great question. What I would do differently is find boundaries and sustainability earlier. Like I had to go through burnout for years And I didn't even know I was burnt out. So I'll tell you how this happened. I was speaking at an event for some VP of supply chain at Amazon, and he had a panel up there, and they were asking me questions. And afterwards, he came to me and said, "Hey, I don't know you, but you seem really burnt out. Are you okay?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm fine. What do you mean?" He's like, "Oh, okay, well, all right. Well, hey, good luck with that. Like, I think you should think about it." Simultaneously, like a week later, I'd started working as a career coach, and he was like, "You're very burnt out." And I'm like, "No, I'm not." He's like, "Okay, take this assessment." We took a burnout assessment. I was like, complete burnout. I didn't even see it. That's how crazy it was. I was walking around, and people I don't even know are saying like, "This guy's burnt out." Like that, I was just so blind to it for years.
Say more,
And
like
so,
say more. Like I'm also trying to understand. I think that's something I ask myself is that like that's one of my feelings is that if I actually see a therapist, they'd be like, dude, like I don't know how you're pulling it off, but I feel okay. Like I feel day to day okay. But I'm just curious, like what was the revelation? What was that came out that you didn't see in day to day?
well, I got so focused on I just have to deliver no matter what. Like that's how my brain worked. Is like I'm gonna get in here, I'm gonna fucking deliver. Sorry, I'm gonna deliver. Beat that out. I'm gonna deliver. I have to deliver. I'm gonna do whatever it takes. I'm gonna grind it. I'm gonna push the boundaries. I'm gonna work at night. I'm gonna was check email on the weekends. I'm la la la, whatever it is. I just got caught in this loop where I thought, like, when you do that, then you think that's what's driving your success. You say, I've been doing this up till now. Am I going to stop? Now I'm going to stop when I'm in more pressure, and I'm going to try to do something different. That was the moment for me where it was like I had to have people tell me. I had to have somebody tell me, and I had to take this assessment and look at the data, and I was like, oh. And they didn't explain to me. They just want to explain what is burnout. So I was showing high levels of cynicism. So that's one of the signals of burnout. I had very little control over what I was working on. That's another driver of burnout. I had poor boundaries. I had no boundaries. I remember my executive coach was like, what's your self-care routine? I was like, what's that? He's like, what do you mean? Like, how do you recharge? I'm like, what do you mean? Man, I had never thought about it once in my career. So that is just a really, looking back, it's almost embarrassingly bad decision making. But I got tricked myself into thinking all that mattered was the scope and delivery and all this stuff. And it was costing me my health through the stress and everything else. And so, again, I'm very lucky that these two gentlemen who I'm still working with the exec coach, and it's completely changed the way I lead. And two, credit to this VP who, walked up and said something to somebody I don't know and really like caused me to shake out of my, I don't know, delusion field on like what the hell I was doing. So that, but counterintuitive, what I want people to understand is, it took me a long time. So at Amazon, I used to take my laptop, and I'd work on the weekends when I first started. Then I said, okay, I'm going to leave the laptop in my car. I'm not even going to take it out. That was like a big thing. Then I said, I'm going to take Chime off my phone. Then I did that and nobody noticed. And then I took email off my phone. And then nobody noticed that either. So like now I don't have any email on my phone. I have Slack for my new job, but I don't have any notifications. Nothing notifies me. Nobody ever calls me. I say, text me, call me if there's an emergency. You can reach me at any time. I'm on myself. Nobody, they will call me if there's an emergency. It's very rarely happened. But that took me 5, 6, 7 years to just get these boundaries. And now what I see as a leader, and it probably would have been true with me as a product manager too, was I have to log off, and almost the more that I can give boundaries to recharge, the better I show up. Like if I come into this interview today and I'm burnt out, there's no way I'm going to have the energy to be on, to think critically, to be vocally self-critical, to connect with you in this audience. I'd be like, you just can't be at your best. And that's what I had to learn was I'm actually at my best almost the less I work. Right. Like I have to come and recharge because as a leader, it's all about emotional intelligence.
Sorry to interrupt. Very similar to when you don't care about your promotions, that shows up.
Exactly.
That's, right.
Exactly. It's like you have to get. You can't. It's counterintuitive for me, at least. It's very counterintuitive. But the less I work, then the times I do work, and what I mean by that, are the more I'm recharged, I'm showing up fresh, I'm not grinding, I'm not pushing it all the time. You can't do that forever. And I thought you could, But now that I've led in a different way, I'm such a better leader now because I'm showing up fresh. I'm not up at 11. I'm not doing all my emails all the time. I have a chance to recharge. I turn my brain off. I don't think about work. That has been, I would argue, I say for this audience, that's the single biggest thing I did for my performance. Honestly, it's you have to try it. Try it. Whatever you're doing now that is just you like I guarantee it. I encourage everyone on this call, take your email off your phone. Like do not take it off your phone. Turn your notifications off. Nothing's going to happen.
Right.
Or if it does, you probably shouldn't be in that role. Again, I'm never going to call my direct and be like, I emailed you and you didn't respond and it's nighttime. I'm like, dude, that's not an emergency channel. You can page me, you can call me. If there's an emergency, use an emergency channel. You can't be on all the time. So that's my insight that took me being burnout for years. Random people telling me I was burnout, me realizing I was burnout. And then you have to find a way to make it sustainable. So for me, here's some of my mechanisms. I try not to work like more than 4 weeks, 5 days a week in a row. Because I just know I need a day off to so if I do 4 weeks of 5 days, I take a day off, like a random day, like a Wednesday or a Friday or a Tuesday. And I just turn off my stuff and I go and I get a massage or I work out or I go eat a good meal or I get outside. I do something else just because I know if I do too many of those weeks in a row, then I'm going to start to get worn down. When I'm worn down, I'm going to say stuff that isn't the best thing to say. And then I'm going to do, as a manager, not be emotionally intelligent as I need to be. I'm not going to be at my best. And that's going to cost me. So I just know I force myself on my calendar to be like, okay, here's 5 weeks. Take that day off. Don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm not going to be at work. That's one thing I do. I always make sure I wake up early now. So I know it's going to sound kind of a grind mindset, but I get up at 5. I work out before work because if I don't do it, then I always tell myself I'll do it at lunch. I don't do it at lunch. I get too tired. Work comes up, something comes up. I don't do it.
Right.
I'm at my best when I work out. So this morning I worked out, had a hard workout because I knew I had this thing. I came in here fresh and a lot of energy. So that's why I'd say people figure out what gives you energy. For me, I have to turn it off. I can't be always on or I'm going to get worn down. And you're going to be, that's my learning is if I can be really excellent in these few situations, it's better than me being like okay or good in every situation.
Right. That's pretty cool. I think I completely agree on the fact that I see people around me, like even at Amazon, like I would see this very high performing, principal engineer, and they would be like, their delivery is coming and they're checking their phone like 20 times in 1 hour. And they're kind of a friend. So I asked them what's happening. They're like, oh, this pack is going to come. I'm like, okay. So, and this is used to the notification. It's like, like I now I have a daughter and I see other kids and I see myself, like sometimes you're just on the phone and I realize that it is just that habit of just picking up your phone, no matter the first ring, and you check it out. And it's just, I can't imagine people getting notified.
It's addicting.
Yeah.
It's addicting. Remember, these products are designed to be addictive because they get impressions that sell ads. So like this is not a personal feeling of anybody. Cell phones are, I'm sure, one of the most addictive things we've ever come up with as humans that are monetized to the max. And I would strongly encourage people to find ways to put distance between yourself and stuff that is not good for you. So for example, I quit all social media. I'm not on any social media platform at all. My life is measurably better without it because I'm just sitting there picking it up and doing nothing. I'm like, what the hell am I doing? Yeah. So I think if you bring it back to the work context, think about that. You can't have, like you said it earlier, the noise level. You have to find a way to drive focus and clarity. You can't do that when you've got thousands of incoming signals and little pings and let me read you just can't. I don't think you can operate optimally in that environment. So that's what I've encouraged you. Do pruning. Figure out what are you not going to do, and you have to own it and be comfortable with it. That was really hard for me to leave my laptop in the car, and then to take my email off my phone, and then to not respond when I'm out. So vacations, that's the other thing. I used to take vacations, I check in a bunch. Now I go on vacation, I'm like, do not call me unless it's an emergency. I'm not going to check my email. I'm not going to check my Slack. Right. That was so scary for me when I started doing it. Now I encourage all my directs to do it. And so when I did my quarterly check-ins with my team a couple weeks ago, multiple people are like, thank you for encouraging me to be off vacation and modeling the behavior. That's the thing. Sometimes later we say something and then we're still emailing late at night because we want to get ahead. People see that. People see what you do and they're going to emulate your behavior. So it's really important as a leader that you model the behavior you expect from your team. And I really try in an intentional way to demonstrate my commitment to, if you're off, be off. I don't expect you to run at night. Set your own hours and do your work. Give straight up feedback and then we'll adjust. It's not hard, but it's hard to do consistently.
Right. It just reminds me of those, I don't know if you've seen those memes, and I know you're out of social media, so probably, haven't. It's like the graph starts like, as an intern, you don't check email, don't check anything. You don't even have a phone that can, have Slack. And then the graph goes up and you become a manager. You're like super intensely, checking everything. And then the graph goes back to the same as intern level.
Exactly. Yeah. I see that guy with the Jedi Master graph or whatever it is. Yeah, exactly. But I don't know how the people work. If you're S team member, I don't know if you can do it. I'd be very curious on this podcast to see what their mechanisms are. Honestly, I think that's something I wish I had more of in my career. The leaders who would show me kind of behind the curtain, who would show me like, I could ask questions like, how do you deal with this? Like, how do you do that? So I had a few leaders in my career who, for me, as soon as I found out like, oh, like these people I look up to, they have boundaries. I was like, okay, cool. I can have boundaries too. But it's like nobody talks about it. And so I don't know. I'd be very curious. So hopefully you can get some on the podcast. Like, what do these big time leaders do? I'm sure a lot of them are on email all the time because that's the expectation. But I don't know how they do that. Like, I don't work that way. And in fact, if you take what Jeff Bezos says in public as gospel, he says he doesn't work that way. I think he's famous for saying, I wake up at 8, I have my coffee, I putt around for a couple hours. My first meeting's at 10. I'm like, whoa, that sounds amazing. My first meeting's at 8 every morning, but I'm a morning person. So I try to put all my stuff as early as possible because by the time I get to 2 or 3 o'clock, I'm like hitting the wall, man. So I don't try to make any decisions late in the day. I don't try to do any big meetings late in the day if I can avoid it. So that's the other thing I tell people is I think you need to figure out what drives optimal performance for you. And I've kind of found this thing that works now. And then I just do it. It's a habit. I do it. It's the guardrails. It's the constraint. And I know if I do this, I'm not going to end up burnout again. And that drives optimal performance for me.
Yeah, no, definitely. And also it's context. Like I think you gave the example of Jeff Bezos. Like I can't imagine him to be doing that when he was setting up Amazon.com back in the 90s and 2000. So
I'm sure he wasn't. But maybe he did. I don't know. Jeff, if you're watching, tell us, did you really do that? If you did, that is an amazing story. If he didn't or forgot, I would forgive him. I don't know. But I think the fallacy we're talking about here is that, there's a bunch of data on this. Like there's a diminishing returns to the work you do over, I think it's 6 hours or something. After that, the quality of your work goes down. You can see a bunch of studies that did on developers on this. I think it's true for athletes. As a human, you have a limited amount of attention and focus and energy, and you can't expect yourself to walk in every day and do a 10-hour block like kicking ass. It's just not gonna work. And so figuring out how do you get to a place where you can do those 6 hours of really good work, and how do you pace yourself so that when you show up you can be at your best. That's something I never heard anybody talk about earlier in my career, and I wish they had. I had to find it out honestly through trial and error and getting lucky with some of the mentors and coaches that I've had.
Awesome. To your other point, I think on setting boundaries, I feel also that it sets a precedence that you are somebody who works on weekends. You are somebody who will give instant reply. And it also ties back to, I think, to your earlier point that you think that's what made you achieve, like whatever you've achieved. And if you start taking away pieces, then everything's going to fall. But it also, I think, externally just projects that, and that's just expected then. And then it's very hard.
That's a great point. It's a great point, Akhil. I think you're right. It's a lot harder to start that way and then undo that than it is to just start the way you want to start. So I think when we're talking about role transitions, it's a really great opportunity for people to recontract what your boundaries are. So when you walk into a new role, the advantage you have is nobody knows, does this guy working every night? Does he work on weekends? Is he going to respond in 2 seconds? I would encourage you to try something new. I think you're going to find most of the time when you set those boundaries, nobody even notices. Like I always thought someone's going to call me out and like, hey, why aren't you, do this? Not one person's ever said that to me. not once.
Yeah. So talk to me about, like, I think I noticed that a lot in your team was like it's a very high trust team, and I think you kind of thrive, and that's a prerequisite for you, just to have a very high trust, transparency. Is that some leadership style that you picked up? I think you. I actually did not know that. I think Amazon, maybe not your first role was not a manager role. I think you transitioned into a manager role when you came into PXT.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
talk to me about, like, where did you pick that up? And I think it's easier said than done, right? Like, it's easy to say I want high trust and transparency, but it's harder to implement because of the structures like we, operate in. So talk to me about, like, some of the practical, like, tools that you have used to be more more trusted leader, and also, like, work in more high trust teams.
Yeah, no, it's I like that question a lot. That's totally my brand, and it's a must for me. Like I can't work in an environment, or I don't want to work in an environment where I can't trust my manager, I can't trust my peers. Like work's hard enough. You don't need to have all this other stuff where it's like, is this person going to do this, or can I trust this? So in my mind, it's a prerequisite. But what do I do to do it? Like, um, I'll give a few examples in no particular order. First thing, every one-on-one I have, at the end of my one-on-one, I ask, what feedback do you have for me? What can I do to help you? So I try to normalize it. I try to normalize, like, okay, I'm the leader. I'm asking you for feedback. And so I give people lots of opportunities. Usually what happens is when we start, everyone's like, I don't have any feedback. And as we get to know each other more, sometimes they'll be like, you know what, actually, I do have feedback. And I take that feedback and say, okay, great. And then I see them asking me for feedback. So I think you have to normalize giving feedback. So I think when we think back to when we were working together in Akil, the Amazon does this employee listening thing, and or tech survey. Every year you get a tech survey. And the result I was always most proud about was this question was something like, I receive actionable feedback from my management. And we were always way up in that thing. And it was really important to me because people want to do good. They can only do what you want to do if you tell them. So as leaders, you have to have the courage to have a tough conversation with someone, but people will respect you for it because they're going to say, cool, all right. Hey, Andrew told me here's some feedback. I adjusted that feedback. Andrew said, hey, I saw you adjust that feedback, and now we're making progress. Now they're learning. So they learn to trust you. So I'd say the first thing with trust is you have to, one, give critical but helpful feedback as a leader. Two is you have to be open to the other way. And that's harder. But if you can get people comfortable with, like, okay, cool, this guy's a straight shooter. He's not going to, manage me out if I say I don't give him critical feedback. Like, feedback is the currency for how we improve. So that's one thing. I'd say you have to be approachable as a leader. Like, so, and you have to care. You have to really care. So one of the things I was always, and still am, very passionate about is, I'm like, cool, I will have anybody in the org in a meeting with me, but if you're in the meeting, you got to participate. So, like, I mean, a lot of times at Amazon, we'd have these meeting rooms and there's only 20 seats, and you'd have some L4 or L5 engineer who'd written this thing, and they're my leaders are like, can we bring them to me? I'm like, yeah, bring them. And oftentimes what I do is like, okay, anybody have any input? And anytime I could get a junior person who was closer to the front lines giving input, I was very interested in what they had to say. That's the thing as a leader, as your career progresses and you're further from the front line, I think you don't realize how much you don't know, because you're not like, the person who knows the best is going to be the person closest to the customer who's really doing the work. And so as a senior leader, you have to figure out, how do I get my listening feelers out to really get this feedback? And I always really loved having people in the meeting who knew what was going on, and particularly if they were going to tell me something that was critically and helpful. Like, I wanted to hear it from people. And so again, it's tough to create an environment where people feel comfortable speaking up, but I always tried to you obviously can't disincentivize people speaking up by getting upset. I think that's something that a lot of leaders do, is they don't want to hear negative things. And so then they see somebody do it one time and you're like, okay, you can't tell that person anything critical. That's one of the worst mistakes that you can make as a leader, because now you're not getting information. And my job is pretty much gather all the information I can and make a good decision. If you don't have the team who's willing to tell you what you don't want to hear, you're going to make some mistakes. So a couple other things I'd say.
Just one question on that. Why do you think people are not invited? Like, why does that happen, Andrew? Like,
well, look, I mean, for a lot of reasons, some of which are legitimate or not. So as a senior leader, particularly when you have a large organization, it's like at Amazon, I was running 350 person organizations. if you're having a sensitive discussion, like let's say we're going to shut down a business or we're deciding to invest or shift resources, you don't want to have a really large room because now as a leader, you can't have the discussion you want to have, which is like, if it's me and my directs or whatever, I'd be like, all right, should we shut this business down? Like, give me the pros and cons. Like we can have a discussion versus as a someone who's not in that leadership chair, it's much harder because you're emotionally invested. Like no one wants to sit there and listen to people debate whether they're going to change their job or change what they work on, or they don't think what they're working on is good. So I would say some of this is intentional, and you need to have the right audience. And if there's senior level or sensitive discussions, a smaller group's going to be better because then you can change, manage, and message this and have that discussion. So that's one reason. But two is I'd say, this is my opinion, some leaders don't value the input of junior folks. I think there's a lot of ego that comes with being an executive and a leader. Some of it's helpful. You have to have confidence to be a leader. You have to have confidence to stand up and tell people and motivate people. But there's too much of a good thing. It's a double-edged sword. If you think you know better than anybody else, maybe you do for a while. But again, my experience is I always depended upon folks to tell me what was really going on. And give it to me straight. And I'm going to have them depend on me to do that with them. If you can get to that type of culture, it's going to be awesome. It's harder to do than you might think.
Makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense. And I think it's just the balance. Like you need to have that periodic critical feedback, and critical or even like true feedback from actual, from the field. Like it doesn't have to feel like an operations at Amazon, but also like in tech and stuff. So that makes sense.
100%.
Yeah. So I think, did you want to add something to the building high trust? So I think one you said is getting feedback from like all levels across. And
I'll say one more thing about it. I think I've been thinking a lot lately on the role of kindness in my leadership. I think a lot of people, when you say you want a high performance culture, that like being kind is a negative to that. Like it has to be hard, it has to be mean, it has to be, hey, I'm going to give you straightforward feedback and it's going to be, I got you in this. I don't think it has to be that way. Like I think particularly in tech, where I would say kindness is undervalued, it's a differentiator for leaders who, if you can find a way to counteract a lot of the more challenging aspects of a company, or in this case our industry's culture, it's a big retention, earns trust, and ability to pull people into your org driver. So for example, at Amazon, one of the things that I did, I think, really well was I wasn't going to burn my team out for arbitrary dates. Like I would just go back to leadership and say, look, we can do it by this date, and here's why. And I would push on and make sure it was real, and we'd negotiate, but I wasn't going to say, hey, we said we deliver it June 1st, and so now everyone's going to have to burn out for 4 weeks to get there. And yeah, it doesn't really matter if we launch June 1st versus the 10th, but I said I'd do it. I don't want to miss it. I was always willing to back up my people like that. And that was different than a lot of the way people ran in tech. And that allowed me, because again, when you're at a large enterprise, most of the people you hire are going to be internal transfers. They're the least risky hire. They're the fastest hire. They already know the tools. They already understand the culture. So like as a leader, I always wanted to have a really, like, how do you attract talent? It's having good managers, and it's having a culture that's supportive and kind and different. And so I would think about, particularly for the leaders listening on the phone, like, or on the podcast, like, what are you going to do? What's your uniqueness? Are you just like a cookie cutter like everybody else? Then okay, then how are you going to pull talent? If they can work for you, then it's the domain or stuff that you don't control. If you have of what your brand that's unique and different, and in my case, a way that was employee centric, that's going to allow you to pull the best talent and retain the best talent. And then those people are going to tell their friends, no, you should come work over here. We actually don't burn it out like everywhere else. Like it's great. And they say, really? They say, yeah, they come on over. So like that's the thing you got to think about is, what are you going to do differently? You have to be differentiated. Especially at Amazon, yes. I don't know how many tens of thousands of managers are at, or hundreds of thousands. I don't know how many managers are at Amazon, but if everybody's the same, okay, then how are you gonna outperform? How are you going to get the best if you're just the same as everybody else? Right. I don't think people realize that. And I think it takes courage and some comfort to do that. But in terms of this high trust environment we're talking about, that was a differentiator. And the best
Yeah.
teams I've worked on as an employee and the best teams I've built as a leader all had that in common. We were all
Mm.
going to tell each other the truth, and we were all willing to take critical feedback and act on it. And we were willing to be able to say the things, particularly the uncomfortable truths, and say, all right, and then adjust to it and deal with it. I think a lot of orgs, that's not the case. And a lot of managers, I don't think, are comfortable with that level of transparency with their directs, and particularly directs that level of comfort with their manager.
Yeah. No, makes sense. I actually stole your idea of asking for feedback, and that's so wonderful. I realized that sparks conversations that would not have happened, especially even outside work. Like I generally I'm like, okay, do you if I'm working on with somebody and there's a few interactions, I always take time and a couple of interactions, like, okay, do you have any feedback for me? Is that in the podcasting, like to the editor, like, can I do something better? And they would tell me 10 things, and I'm like, wow, I'm so new to this, and they think like they're not supposed to tell me anything because I'm paying them, but it actually changes the whole equation, and it sets you up for success. Talk to me about, like, I think a lot of your risk taking abilities. I think you've mentioned that you want to take more risk earlier on, or make you also like felt that you could do a little bit more balanced life, as you said, like where you understood that your job is not your identity.
Yeah.
But that's something that very kind of contrasting to how you work in entrepreneurship, and you had that's a sort of experience. I'm wondering, like, could you give us a brief on how the two skills actually help? I do feel that as an entrepreneur, especially at senior levels, I would say you are an entrepreneur. You're running a company. Basically, you're having a huge population under you, and you're running basically a company. And you are fighting for their survival, for their growth, and it's like a mini company within a bigger company. Like, talk to me about the differences, and what is this like? Are there some skills that really helped you earlier on to start a company and then join Amazon?
Yeah, no, I like this question. Um, I think for me, a lot of the skills were the same. So if you ask me why did I stay at Amazon for almost 12 years, the answer was when I first joined. By the way, so for people who don't know my career background, I graduated with a master's degree in music technology. I was a music major undergrad. I had started working on early iPhone apps, and I did music programming. And so I worked on one app that was like number one app in the world. And I built a business doing consulting with brands like Coke and others to do basically interactive music mobile applications. And so it was a lot of hustle. Like it was, again, it's a lot of bias for action. It's a lot of customer obsession. I think big. So when I joined Amazon, I was really worried. I was like, man, even at the time, this is kind of funny now to think Amazon's big in 2013. It was like, 50,000 employees or something, not very many compared to today. But I was really worried, man, like it's going to be this slow, bureaucratic corporate behemoth. I'm going to become this drone here, whatever. It was not like that at all. So like when I showed up to Amazon, my job was to acquire and engage customers for mobile shopping applications. So like, okay, this guy's worked on big apps and we have an app, so we'll hire him to do marketing. I never had a marketing job. The only companies I worked for was myself or early stage startups like seed level. I had never had like benefits or like a real paycheck. I mean, like it was like my first real job. And the first week I wrote a PRFAQ. So I came in and I was like, they're like, okay, here's how you do marketing placements and stuff. And I was like, okay, cool. And then I just wrote this PRFAQ on, it was this idea, I forget what it was, but it was something like, they did it later, but it was called like local, I think it was like local pickup or something. Like you could pick up items from like someone's garage or something like that. I forget what I called it. But I took it to my manager and she's like, oh, this is really good. We'll take the VP to the VP. So like in my first couple of weeks, I figured out at Amazon, you can just write a doc and you can shop it around. And that was like, that was something I did my whole career. It was like, oh, I can just make this happen. I don't have to ask for permission. I don't have to like wait for anybody. I can just write the idea and I can go talk to people and I might be able to convince them or I might not. And so a lot of what I got was this bias for action, ownership, think big. It was like, cool. I remember another time, I was doing social commerce stuff for Amazon, and we wanted to drive Instagram followers in the early days of Instagram. So I somehow figured out the packaging guy in India who could program the actual like laser etching we did on our package stamps. And I said, I was like, cool, how many lines can I put on there? And I put like, don't miss out, follow us on Instagram with a QR code. I just did it. Nobody asked me to do it. And it ran for like an embarrassingly long time, like 7 years. I think we said it did billions of impressions. And that was just me calling up somebody and figuring out how they could program the package labeler. I did other stuff like that. I got on the package tape from Mobile Shop. I got on the gateway. So I just went to office hours and I was like, I'm going to show up every week until I convince this person to put this mobile shopping application up here. I had all my data and stuff. So I'd say that the same skills I had as an entrepreneur, which is I'm going to call 50 people and I'm going to market myself and I'm going to just send all these cold calls and emails. I did the same thing at Amazon. It was a huge driver of my success. I remember oftentimes in my career, people come back and be like, how'd you do this? I'd be like, I just went and talked to them. So that's what I encourage people is it's actually a lot the same. This is Amazon culture. I don't know about other cultures, but Amazon's and even Atlassian, like the ability to control your own destiny and create value without asking for permission and waiting around and there's a lot you can do by just picking up the phone or walking into the room and talking to people. So like for me, it was largely the same. Now, what's different, of course, I would say two things. One is you're not the boss. So when you run entrepreneurship, you can kind of do whatever the hell you want. You're the boss. In any company, you're going to have layers of people you report into. So it's important to don't ignore your relationship with your boss. You can't just go off and do whatever you want all the time. You have to like let them know, and so they can give you some air cover and feedback. So like I had to learn that a little bit. I was a little bit of like a rogue person, just like going and doing stuff. And most of the time it was good, but sometimes we're like, what the hell are you doing? Why are you doing this? Or like, we're already doing that over here. I'm like, oh, okay, I didn't know. Like, so I kind of had to figure out, when do I need to be a good soldier and disagree and commit and follow the rules, and when can I go out and try to create something out of nothing. And there's timing for both of these things, but I encourage people to learn how to be a good soldier as well as learn how to go out and be an entrepreneur. There's value to both, but you can't do one or the other all the time. And particularly following the damn rules. I think people, we value these free thinkers and people who push back on stuff, but like there's times when the best thing you can do is just like, got it boss. Cool. Right. Like, I disagree. I'm committing. I'm done. Second thing is relationships matter a lot. I'd say more than they did in Entrepreneur, where I had more control over my own results. Like in a company, so this is when I went from Amazon to Atlassian. For folks who don't know, Amazon's a GM model. So at Amazon, I led multiple functions. I had the engineers, I had the economists, I had the data scientists, I had the UX designers, I had the product people. Everything I needed to deliver my results was in my organization. So it's very fast. I can take a decision. I don't have to go convince 5 people. They report to me. I just say, okay, great. I heard the options. Here's what we're going to do. Everybody go do it. Great. We're moving. At Atlassian, I run a product team. That's it. I don't have any engineers. I literally cannot do anything other than write documents and influence people. And so that was really scary for me. I valued the control, and now it's all about my ability to influence and build those relationships. So I would say I didn't value relationships enough early in my career. I was all about the business. I'd show up and say, all right, here's what we're trying to do. All right, you doing this, I'm doing this. Right. Okay, great. But I've learned, particularly in exec, it's the relationships that matter. So I really go in and I want to get to know folks and build a relationship, because eventually they're going to call me or I'm going to call them and say, look, I need a favor. I need this. Here's why I need it. And if you have a relationship, they'll be like, all right, I'll do it. But if you don't, they're going to say, hey, sorry, you're not on my list. Nothing I can do, or if you really piss people off and be like, no, I'm not going to do it. And I'm going to like not doing it because Andrew has been annoying and has been an asshole or whatever. Like, so I think that's the thing I would tell people is your ability to get work done. I think is a large part determined by the relationships you have with people who are going to do things for you, particularly as an exec or a manager or leader. So those are the two things that are different. A lot the same in terms of the drive and ability to go create something nothing, but in a big enterprise, you don't devalue those interpersonal relationships. That's how work gets done.
Cool. Thanks, Andrew. I think I definitely learned so much from this conversation. It was, great seeing you after so long. And
likewise.
Where can people find you? Is it only LinkedIn?
Only LinkedIn. Yeah. I mean, I'm not on social media, so you can find me on LinkedIn. I think it's /Andrew Willingham. Just it was my name, 2 W's in the middle. Would love to connect with folks. I think, I'm very passionate about how we bring balance and how we lead from a place of kindness and how we make this sustainable. And I'd love to connect with other folks who are exploring the same things or have tips and tricks and learn from them. So thank you for having me, Nikhil. This has been awesome to reconnect and hopefully is interesting or provided value to some people. Again, if you can learn from my mistakes, great. You don't have to make them yourself.
Thanks. I definitely learned. So I think there's already one person who's gaining from this, and that's why I do this podcast. Right. And I would love to see you in Seattle, like sometime when you're available.
Yeah, when you're out, off. Yeah, hey man, I'll take it off any time of the day. That's the nice thing here is we work remote, so I can figure out how to do my day. So if you're in Seattle, hit me up. I'd love to go grab coffee and connect. And congratulations on the birth of your daughter and your marriage and everything else, man. I mean, I'm just thrilled for you as a person that you're just thriving, dude. You're doing it. So I think keep doing what you're doing. And this podcast is great too. So I'm just really proud, really happy to see you and see you doing well.
Yeah, I just feel very grateful, Andrew. So I got to report into your team, and I think that gave me a lot of perspective in this conversation. I think thank you so much. I can't ask for more. Thanks, Andrew. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for listening to this conversation. I definitely learned a lot from Andrew. He gave a lot of practical tips on how to navigate your career, especially in high stress and high outcome environment like Amazon and other corporate careers. So if you like this episode, please share with somebody who you think could use this information in navigating their career to have remarkable outcomes, but without getting burnt out. And as always, please subscribe to the channel. These guests are really handpicked by me in my network. These guests you will not find anywhere else. Thank you so much for listening in.